AFC South. I'm your host, Mike Patton. And of course, the playoffs are here and the Super Wildcard weekend has wrapped up. Of course, plenty to talk about there. But who better to bring on than the co-host of the Gridiron Gals podcast and one of the best follows on Twitter out there. Here to talk with me about NFL football, Baltimore Ravens, and Super Wildcard weekend. I've got Reeta the NFL Chick. What's going on?
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Thank you for accepting the invitation and coming on.
Anytime.
Appreciate it. Now, before we get into anything, I got to get your thoughts on the Super Wildcard weekend that just passed. What were some of the most surprising things that happened, and some of the most satisfying things that you saw?
The most surprising things I think was how bad the games were overall. I'd say there was a total of 5 quarters of good football, and then after that, everything was a mess. Um, and I think I was just surprised by that, just in terms of like, I really thought certain games would be competitive. I thought that the Rams and Cardinals game would be competitive. I thought that, the 49ers Cowboys game would have been a little bit more competitive from the Cowboys side, although I thought that San Francisco would come out with a win. So, I just kind of was surprised by how bad the games were overall. Um, in terms of some things that I guess I didn't expect to see, nothing. Like, I can't really, the weekend went the way that I thought that it would. I thought that the Bengals would win in a close one. I thought that the 49ers would win in a close one. I felt like all the teams that won were supposed to win. There were no teams that was upset to me. Now, again, I don't know how people picked that Cowboys 49ers game, but I felt like the 49ers were the more consistent hot team going into that game. And I felt like that they had a better chance of keeping that momentum as opposed to Dallas, who outside of that last game of the season, they had struggled, the last month or so after that came back. So, yeah, it was really hard to watch at times. And I'm just hoping for better times this weekend.
Yeah. Gotcha. I definitely agree. Boy, there was definitely some rough moments there, especially in the Philly game in Tampa Bay and Pittsburgh and Kansas City. I had to cover my eyes both of those games.
And they went the way that they were supposed to, right? Like, everybody knew that neither one of those teams belonged. I don't want to say that they didn't belong, right? I mean, obviously they earned it. I feel a type of way about the 7th seed, and we can get into that another day, but I honestly just feel like that, 6 is good, and then after 6 is a potential drop off. Now, the story might be different if the Chargers would have made it, right? Maybe it's a different type of game. I feel like it would have been a little bit more evenly balanced in that regard, because the Steelers are so bad in terms of Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback. They're just not a good football team, but they have good parts. But the quarterback position is playing at a low level. Had it been the Chargers, maybe I changed my mind about it, but they didn't. And so it kind of shows like maybe the 17 thing isn't a good idea. I mean, from the NFL perspective, it gives us 2 more games. So I guess you can never have enough football, but it's not good football. And that's the problem.
Gotcha. Now, of course, we do have to talk about the team that you love. That would be the Baltimore Ravens. Now, what did you think of their season this year, and what do you think they need to do going in the next season to kind of make the playoffs?
I mean, I think that their season is pretty obvious. Even if you're just somebody that watches football, maybe not a Ravens fan, but kind of keep abreast of everything else that's going on in the NFL. From training camp on, they've had some really crucial injuries that impacted this team immediately going into the season. And as the season went on, the injuries just didn't stop. It didn't let up at all. And so I think that I don't really have an opinion about this year in that regard. Like them not making the playoffs. Okay, well, their starting quarterback didn't play in a month. And then you're still missing key guys. The offensive line had over 20 different starting rotations. Like that's always going to be a recipe for disaster. And then on defense, you had some guys that were lost, and Deshaun Elliott, and eventually Marlon Humphrey, and some other impact players. And Marcus Peters, of course, was from the beginning, so he never played a down this season. And then they ended the season with Tyus Bauer going out with an Achilles, which is one of their players that really ascended this year. So injuries is the word for 2021. Would I like to see what happens to them in 2022? Well, hopefully, number one, they get better. They're a healthier football team. I think that in the draft, they have like 10 picks, I believe. So it would be nice to see them come out with some offensive linemen, some defensive linemen, because you obviously need some depth on both sides of the trenches. You have some guys that are potentially retiring on the defensive line, and Calais Campbell. And then on the offensive side, we don't know what Ronnie Stanley, the all-pro left tackle, is going to be. So you really want to bolster up your offensive line and your defensive line. I'd love to see them get a safety because I do think that that's necessary. Although some people like the idea of getting a safety in free agency, I still think that you need to draft a young one. And then, of course, work on getting your wide receivers becoming the group that people project them to be. You have a 1,000-yard guy in Marquise Brown. You have another guy in Bateman who I think had 500 yards. It was his rookie season, but he has all the potential in the world to be a number one guy. Of course, you have all-pro Mark Andrews, so you have that guy. Just getting them acclimated and getting them better and getting them to be better, and getting the other guys that maybe didn't get as many snaps in 2021 to be more acclimated in this offense in 2022. So when you do get all your pieces back, like your running backs that you didn't have last year, and Lamar comes back healthy, they can have a rapport and start to glue together to become this offense that many of us projected them to be.
Yeah, speaking of offense and the passing game, I've got one particular guy that I think would solve a lot of your problems.
Who's that?
That would be if Greg Roman was gone.
I'm not a huge fire Greg Roman person. I think that he's some of the issue. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. But it was too many times that I've seen formations of guys being open. And it's too many times that I've seen Lamar ignore the guys in the flat because he wants to take the long, he wants to get the deep ball out that wasn't available. And so this year that I think that Greg Roman has done a good job of is getting guys out in the flat, which is something he hadn't done previously. And this year it became more apparent that he was making that happen. Lamar not wanting to throw to those guys because he feels like he can get the same amount of yards that those guys can get is a Lamar problem. I don't consider it to be a Greg Roman problem. Are some of the concepts problematic, and could they be fixed? Absolutely. And I would like to see that being changed. But I am not a big person that is fire Greg Roman like everybody else, because there's too many opportunities that I've seen guys be open and find creases because of the concepts that was implemented, and Lamar just not take those guys. So if we're going to call Greg Roman out, we have to call Lamar Jackson out too. He has to be held accountable for the times that he was given the tools and he chose just simply not to use them because he wanted to try to get the big play. So.
Gotcha. Now, I don't know. I guess I feel a certain way about him because I've seen him in San Francisco and Buffalo not develop quarterbacks to wwhere they could be, and that's where my thinking was.
And that's fair.
But hey, he'll probably live to fight another day.
I think he has one more chance at this point. I think if you don't see some progression, which I felt like Lamar was ascending. Before the Miami game, I felt like Lamar was ascending. And I think that a lot of that had to do with good. I thought he was, for a good part of the season, I thought he did really good with the play calling and the concepts. Once they got into the zero coverage situation and Lamar just completely decided to ignore the shallow routes and the outsides, then it became problematic. But again, some of that is Greg, some of that is Lamar. So we have to call everybody accountable in that regard. So Greg Roman has to change those things, but Lamar Jackson has to live to see another down too. Taking those types of sacks is ridiculous. Not being able to throw it to the guy that's open on the flat is ridiculous. You got to change those things.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Definitely. He still has to definitely develop as a passer. I mean, even though I thought he was a better passer at Louisville than he's been in the NFL.
Yeah.
Of course, we did talk about, of course, the Ravens and things like that, but we're going to talk about a team that's familiar to you, Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Cincinnati Bengals won their playoff game, and they're headed down here to Tennessee. Now, what can Tennessee Titans fans expect to see from that team?
They have a very, very good group of skill players, from their running back and Joe Mixon to, of course, Jamar Chase. You've seen the damage that Jamar Chase has been able to do. Joe Burrow is very good at subsiding the pass rush. He can slide around the pocket, move around, avoid the sacks, and still get the ball out and make plays. T. Higgins is really good as well as a number 2. Even their tight ends have been productive. So this is a very well-balanced football team. Their offensive line is still the Achilles heel of that team, but they've held up pretty well. Because I feel like Vegas has a very good defensive line. And for the most part, they were able to contain that. And I think that Joe Burrow plays a lot into that because he moves around in the pocket. So this will be interesting for the Titans because from a defensive perspective, I've seen them have really good games. Example, the Rams game. And then I've seen them struggle against teams like the Texans. And this is not a Titans problem. This is an NFL problem. We've seen a lot of teams that should have been beating the brakes off of somebody barely coming out with a win. So that is not, I'm not subscribing that directly to the Titans. I'm just making the point that I don't know what Titans defense is going to show up because I've seen the potential of that defense, but then I've also seen them not show up at times. Now, I would like to assume that this is a playoff game. So, it's balls to the wall at this point. I would be more looking forward to seeing what that offense does. Does Derrick Henry establish the play this weekend? Or because I know he's practicing. Is he playing?
Well, it's kind of Mike Vrabel's kind of this week, I should say. He's not giving whether he's going to play or not, but he's basically saying, hey, I've got guys out there hitting him. I don't know if you follow Teron Davenport that covers the Titans. But yeah, he's got a lot of video up of him catching passes or coming out of drills and 2 guys standing there to hit him.
Yeah. So that's the part that I think they already are still good team in terms of like play action and stuff, and they've done a good job in Henry's absence. Obviously, they're the number 1 seed in the AFC. But Derrick Henry is just a different animal, and that's for lack of a better term. He's just a different person. He's fast, he's strong, he can block, he can do everything. And so he changes the dynamic of the football game. So if Derrick Henry plays, I love to see, it's going to be interesting because I feel like the Titans, as long as they get time of possession, and obviously if they score 7s and not 3s, because the Bengals are going to score 7s, then you are in position to really, move along to the AFC Championship. Keeping the Bengals offense off the field is going to be the most important thing. And obviously in doing that, you have to run the football, but we know that the Titans have weapons that they want to pass to as well. So if Derrick Henry comes back, I love their chances. I think that Cincinnati is a really good football team. I just don't think that they are ready for big party yet. And I know that they beat the Chiefs. I'm aware. I just think that, they're not ready for the big party, even though I do think this will be a good football game.
Gotcha. Well, I'll tell you what, you made a lot of Titans fans happy.
I can speak objectively, you know.
I know. I'm just giving you a little grief. But speaking of another team, of course, we talked about the Titans and, Derrick Henry, things like that. We got to talk about the Indianapolis Colts. They had one win to get into the playoffs. They lost to the and they lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team they have not beaten Jacksonville since 2014.
That's correct.
And now the season is over. Did that surprise you to see that happen?
No, it didn't. Because number one, what you mentioned, they had not won in Jacksonville in 6 years, seven. And also Carson Wentz. People want Carson Wentz to be something that I just don't think he's capable of anymore. I think that Carson Wentz is a good transitional player. I don't think he was worth what the Colts gave up for him ultimately. But I think that Carson Wentz is a good guy that you can put in between your past and your future. I don't think Carson Wentz is your future. I think that there's a confidence issue with Carson Wentz, and that stems from Philly. I also think that there's a durability issue with Carson Wentz, even though I know this year from a health standpoint he's been good, but durable. They won a game, and I can't remember who it was against, but later down the stretch, they won a game, and I want to say this was a Thursday night game. He had 57 passing yards.
Yikes.
So the inconsistencies are there. And, obviously when everything is on the line, that's what happens. Because you were literally winning in. That was it. We wouldn't have these conversations about anybody else if the Colts had won this football game. And for whatever reason, he just was not able to provide that. So I don't know if you've heard this, but the Colts GM, I believe, spoke out and didn't guarantee that he was keeping Carson Wentz at this point, and that they were going to reevaluate some things. That is a sure sign that they are ready to move on as well, and that maybe they're just ready to tie their losses, because I can't foresee a GM giving up what he did only for him to say at the end of the season, yeah, I don't really know what we're going to do next year. We're going to figure this out, but I'm not guaranteeing nothing. If you're Carson Wentz, you got to feel some type of way about that. But you also earn that if you're Carson Wentz. You earn that. Like, you got to own that, bro. You literally just had to win a football game against the team that had once again, in the second year in a row, has the number one pick in the NFL draft. And you couldn't even come out and do that. And that's disappointing and embarrassing, quite frankly.
Yeah, would making me feel even more bad about that loss is if they signed Nick Foles this offseason. That'd make it even worse.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, maybe Mitch Trubisky is available. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying.
No, he'll be available. Yeah, I don't think Chicago wants to pay him anymore.
Well, he's in Buffalo now. I think he's a backup for Josh Allen. So,
Oh, huh? Oh, I didn't know that one.
Yeah,
I must have missed it.
Well, are you talking? Okay. Wait, are we talking Foles? Because I said Trubisky. You mentioned Foles. I mentioned Trubisky.
No, I'm going with Foles.
Oh yeah. Foles is still in Chicago, and then I was facetiously saying, well, maybe Mitch Trubisky, since they like washed quarterbacks, maybe Mitch Trubisky will be available. So yeah.
Well, Foles is kind of in that wash category too, unless he's in the Philly uniform.
Yep.
He gets that S on his chest when he gets in the Philly uniform.
Yep.
All right. So I did want to ask as well. Of course, I know we're down to our final 8. So I've got to ask, if you had to predict the AFC Championship representatives and the NFC Championship representatives, who are you taking?
You got to take. Well, you don't have to do anything, but I'm taking the Titans and the Chiefs. And then in the NFC, I am taking a rematch of Green Bay and Tampa. So those are my final
Oh.
four picks. I know people love the Rams, and that's fine. Shout out to Matt Stafford for winning his first playoff game in like 13 seasons. Good for you. But I don't trust Matt Stafford. I don't. I don't know what Matthew Stafford is going to show up. And I don't like Arizona's cornerbacks, which is why he had so much success. I'm not saying that Tampa's is worldly better because they've had some struggles as well, but I think that Tampa's is better than Arizona's. And then obviously they're playing an offense who is just as well tuned as they are in Tampa Bay at Tampa. So I just, every time we try to count Tom Brady out, Tom Brady just continues to prove us wrong. I'm not going to be the one to pick against Tom Brady. Everybody else can do it. But if you want to pick the guy that just won his first playoff game ever, opposed to the guy that has, is it 7 Super Bowls now? I'm not doing it. I'm just not.
Yeah, it's
maybe the next week I might, but this week I'm not doing it.
I'll tell you what, I'm actually going with the NFC West rematch. I'm going with Rams 49ers 3. And I'm going to go with Titans and Kansas City as well. So,
that'll be interesting.
I just don't see the NFC West not getting a team in the NFC Championship game. Just don't see it. Well,
I don't trust Matt Stafford at all.
I can't see it.
I don't trust Matt Stafford. And look, I love Jimmy G, but this is January and this is Green Bay. And I just think very few people can be a Tom Brady and go in and win those football games. We know that it happens. We've seen it happen before. I just think they're few and far between. And I think that they've already got that lost out of them last year. So now I just think, but I think that San Fran is going to put up a fight for sure. Like, I don't even think that that's going to be like a blowout of any sorts. I think that San Fran is a really well-tuned football team. And I'm excited to see how they grow next year, whether they move on from Jimmy G and let Trey Lance come in or not, which I think the former is going to happen more so. But I do think this will be a really good football game. I just think that Green Bay finds a way to squeak it out.
Gotcha. We'll definitely see. It'll be interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, and so, I don't, it's too early, but who do you have as your Super Bowl matchup?
What I think it'll be is the young boy in Mahomes versus the old man Rodgers. Because they're so much alike and people would love to see that matchup. I think that the Titans will find a way to make it, though. I think that the Chiefs still have some issues on defense. And I think that the Titans could exploit those issues on defense. And I think that unlike Kansas City, because the Titans are very good at running the football, that means it takes time away from Patrick Mahomes and company to, kind of get a rhythm going. So, yeah, I think the people would like to see Kansas City and Green Bay. I think that the Titans have enough, though, to beat the Chiefs because the Chiefs still have issues.
Yeah, definitely. The biggest thing that going for the Titans is no one expects them to win the championship, the AFC championship. Because when the Titans, everyone picks them to win, they don't win. When no one wants them to win or no one thinks they'll win, they win those games. I mean, for example, the Rams game, nobody thought they'd win that one. I mean, there's plenty other games that nobody thought they would win that they won. Well, definitely has been a good time talking a little NFL. Can you tell everyone where they can find you on social media and what all you have going on?
Sure. So I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at the NFL Chick. We have the Gridiron Gals podcast, and that is myself and my best friend Chels. And on Twitter, she's Chels is right. And
Good follow as well.
And Gridiron Gals, GALS. I also do, well, the season is over for the Ravens, but I typically do Project Game Day, post game for the Ravens with myself and Glenn Clark Radio at Pressbox Radio. And if you're in the Maryland area and you're seeing this, Glenn and I will be hosting at Maryland Live this weekend at the FanDuel Sportsbook. We will be hosting the Bucks Rams game. So we'll be out at 3:00 giving away stuff, advising some good prop bets for people to do, and some good back and forth commentary about playoff football. So if you're able to come and you're in the Maryland area, please join us at Maryland Live.
Well, let me see if my itinerary will allow me. I'm just kidding. But I'm actually going to be at the Titans and Bengals game Sunday.
Nice.
Saturday.
Yeah, so, enjoy that. That's going to be a good time.
Definitely. It's going to be interesting because Houday will definitely be down here.
Yeah, I guess. I didn't know that a whole bunch of fans existed until now. So, all right.
Yeah, I've actually came across few that said they're making the trip. It's gonna be interesting. So
yeah.
But again, everyone, thank you all for tuning in. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter. As you see, Mike Patton 82, MikePatton 82. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Touring the AFC South. We're out.